Okay, you can call me. Hey, Laura, what's up? Hey, don't worry about it. I just wanted to make sure that you were all settled in Brazil. South Africa is very much like the village I'm from at home. Where I'm living, it's actually pretty much in a hub of a poverty-stricken area. The houses are huts and there's no sewage or water systems. The air is super thick, heavy, and the heat is tangibly lands on every surface, suffocating people and following them down the street like frickin' gypsy cabs. But the humidity is okay. Very reminiscent of my childhood in Bombay, along with the ardent scent of spices. There's a lot of cooking around here. A lot of the villagers are very kind and invite you into their homes and cook you dinner and stuff like that. The people are just super happy and constantly offering me company, which is wonderful. Yeah, I mean, actually, I just met with a patient today who was in pretty bad shape. She was a young woman, no more than 15 or 16, super silent, only nodding and shaking her head to indicate her disarray. But what honestly got to me most was her eyes. They just spoke volumes, as if crying with discomfort and shouting with shame. And when I asked her about her diagnosis with HIV, she literally jolted back and shook her head violently, saying, I ain't got AIDS. But, she muttered it in Zulu, and my Zulu is slowly progressing. I'm still learning, but I could just tell how upset she was, not by the fact that she had the illness, but because of what it represented. She reminded me a lot of the neighborhood kids, who were in Bombay, who were weakened with the woes of malaria, but still had the strength. She's not defeated by life, but she's more defeated by the fact of what this illness brings to her family and to herself. And as a young girl, not yet a woman, it really worries me that this will continue to plague the rest of her life, not just the illness, but the stigmatization. Her body was skeletal, collapsing within itself, writhing in pain and wrinkling at the crease, and all of her body weight had collected below her abdomen, and she almost held her tummy in her hands as if there was a newborn child inside of her. Very indicative of the symptoms that many see in an HIV patient. The corners of her lips were covered in deep red, oozing scabs, and clearly she had been picking at them. Her whole body was just inflamed and engorged by ruby rashes, and she was coughing, exposing a discolored, woolly tongue. It was honestly just really heartbreaking. Yeah, honestly, South Africa has the biggest and highest profile of HIV in the world, with an estimated 6.3 million people living with HIV, and that was the 2015 census. In that same year, there were 330,000 new infections, while 200,000 South Africans died from AIDS-related illnesses. Specifically, the HIV prevalence is almost 40% in the region that I'm in, which is KwaZulu-Natal, compared with the 18% in the Northern Cape and Western Cape. It's easily contractable here because some traditions and socioeconomic developments have contributed to the extensive spread of HIV-1 infection, including the subordinate position of women, impoverishment and decline of social services, rapid urbanization and modernization, wars and conflict. Populations in many parts of Africa are also becoming trapped in this vicious circle because this epidemic actually leads to high mortality rates in the young and economically productive age groups, thus leading to even more impoverishment. Um, but yeah, so I am in the region most affected by HIV, which is the KwaZulu natal region. But the issue is that barely any people are seeking my help. Yeah, I mean, the clinic is posted in a rundown shack in the outskirts of the South African desert. We have adequate drugs and instruments to help treat these patients. However, we only have 5 beds. Even so, we really only get one patient a day. And with the rates that I just discussed with you, it seems absurd that we only get one patient a day. And the issue is that there's such a stigmatization surrounding HIV in this country that prevents those who've contracted it to seek help. So if an infected person has, HIV or AIDS, they generally perceive this as negative in social terms. And because of this, they're marginalized. And the stigmatization ideas about HIV have such a powerful hold on society because they are often based on pre-existing stereotypes and prejudices, resulting in AIDS often being framed within a moral concept of blame and responsibility and deservedness. So in this respect, people living with HIV and AIDS are often judged to have brought the disease upon themselves by engaging in already culturally prohibited behaviors. And since I'm located in such a rural area, the stigmatization is even worse, hence why the rate is increasingly worse. So in South Africa, research has shown that people who are poor or uneducated or lack basic literacy skills tend to stigmatize more than the rich and educated. So there are tons of people here who need my help, yet no one is asking for it. And the UN has done such a great job at providing these resources that are at my disposal to give to these people, but they haven't done as good of a job as disintegrating this shameful perception of the illness. I mean, honestly, that's a great question. Cultural or traditional beliefs about this illness can contribute to the stigma, and in some cases, HIV or AIDS is blamed on witchcraft, spirits, and supernatural forces, which makes people want to stay away from these people. The disease is also seen as as a form of religious punishment for a culpable person, or a curse from God, or a sinner's disease. I've been doing a lot of reading down here, and a couple studies have helped explain why this stigma exists. And what I found really fascinating was that about 31% of members of rural communities often associate HIV with death. 27% associate it with immoral behavior or something that the person did wrong. 19 believe it's a punishment from God or something evil happening, and then an even smaller percentage of 13 respondents indicated that it's a traditional cultural perspective on HIV being related to bewitchment or the lack of adherence to cultural traditions. But outside of these statistics, 8% indicated that people in their community even denied the existence of HIV being in the area. I mean, I definitely have seen it firsthand. There's different types of discrimination, including subtle discrimination such as gossiping or not treating the person with respect or even keeping a distance. I would say those have been the most common forms that I've seen, but I've also seen more overt forms such as attempts to humiliate or physically harm the person, and to the point where families are not even taking care of the person and they're leaving them to kind of die on their own. I mean, honestly, I have talked to them, but they've just made things worse. To address the stigma that exists, there's a thorough misunderstanding of the nature of the stigma and the specific cultural context is needed. Specifically in South Africa, a more committed political response to HIV, the active development of systems of care and treatment and media coverage of the numerous community actions of caring for people living with HIV can possibly change the generalized perception that communities are stigmatizing towards HIV, but it is also possible that the urgency of the growing epidemic and the efforts in building capacity to deal with the implications of the epidemic contribute to a culture of caring in communities. Unfortunately, though this isn't the type of change that happens in a day, but we can start to make that change now. And change needs to start from a grassroots level with community leaders and then gradually disperse throughout the masses until this perception or this stigma is obsolete. A little help from government leaders wouldn't be too shabby either. Anyway, I've been talking a lot about me, but how's everything going in Brazil? Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not as with the times on the situation with Zika because I've been so overwhelmed here. But please, explain it to me. What's going on over there? Yeah, I mean, just the other day I spoke to a fellow doctor here whose patient had a child with microcephaly. Gosh, yeah, that's frightening. Sorry if I already asked you this, but how'd you end up in Brazil instead of another South African country? And where exactly in Brazil are you? Wow, yeah, that really does sound scary. What are you doing specifically? So correct me if I'm wrong, but can't Zika be transmitted sexually as well? Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that being a roadblock. It's just so sad that these people can't get the help they need, just because they're villagers living in a less economically prosperous area. Yeah, that honestly sounds a lot like the inequality issues that I'm seeing here in South Africa. Honestly, these conflicts seem regional, but realistically, they're slowly starting to affect all of us. No, I can't say I have. I'm not familiar with that. What exactly is that? Yeah, you can honestly say that again. No, yeah, there really is. I've not only experienced this in South Africa, but I still have memories back in my hometown back in India. There's a very distinct disparity between those blessed with the opportunity to have access to resources and those who just weren't as lucky. I guess only time will tell. Yeah, no, it was really nice catching up, and please call me whenever and keep me updated on your experiences there. I'm really intrigued, and I really do care about everything that's going on. So I will talk to you soon. Thanks for calling again. Bye.